But thank you all to everyone inside the Darley team for joining us here today. This is now the second Darley Smart Firefighting New Technology training for all Darley reps. Today, the goal is to have you learn from James Mullins, the CTO, CEO. Frankly, he wears every hat at Flame and does everything, but one of the smartest guys I know around virtual reality and robotics. So we're going to hear from James about a little bit about Flame. You've heard a lot about the Flame Trainer. Today, we're going to focus on the Flame Extinguisher. And to kind of start us off, James, I'd love to have you elaborate on, for those of us that are not familiar with virtual reality, tell us, what is virtual reality? What is VR training? And how does that tie in with extinguisher training?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And thanks all for coming in this afternoon. It's early-ish in the morning for me. I guess I'll touch on virtual reality. And virtual reality has been a bit of a buzzword for 20, 30 years now, back before I had grey hair. But I guess virtual reality is a component of what we do, and we call it, immersive learning or immersive training. It enables us to put someone into a world that doesn't exist, and create experiences that are really visceral. It enables people to experience what it would be like in the event of a fire. And in the event of our Flame Trainer system, our biggest system, it gives you the full physicality, the force or the nozzle reaction of the hose, the heat of the environment, the audios and visuals. With our extinguisher, we give you the tactile experience of holding a fire extinguisher. We give you the visuals, the rich visuals and the audio of being there, and creating experiences that are really, really hard, expensive, dangerous, environmentally unfriendly to create in the real world. So, it's very hard in fire extinguisher training, for example, to be able to show what it's like to put water onto a fat fire. But in virtual reality, we can do anything.
And so it seems like within virtual reality, if something is expensive or if something is dangerous or it's an environmental concern, it's a good idea to consider virtual reality training.
Yeah, very much. We can train people in kitchen fires, in industrial waste spills and fires and things like that in a boardroom. So if you've got an organisation that is struggling to meet their occupational health and safety training regime, it means that they can train anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, and so extinguisher training, what is currently done, and why is this something that can now offer a unique or new experience for fire departments or Home Depots or anyone that has a fire extinguisher? How could they now consider using this as an alternative?
Yeah, look, I've got some slides, and I think I can show you some of these in a little bit, I guess. But what we understand in the US, at least, is that employers have the obligation to train their employees in the use of a fire extinguisher every year. Now, I guarantee that doesn't happen. It certainly doesn't happen over here in Australia. A lot of people have seen extinguishers on the wall. They don't have any idea what extinguisher to use in the event of a certain type of fire. Most people think, see fire, put fire out, use water, something like that. I guess my point around that is that, most fires in the workplace can be extinguished with a fire extinguisher if applied correctly and early on. And we're finding that isn't the case in the statistics of what ends up being large scale fires. So traditionally fire extinguisher training is done with real fire extinguishers maybe out in the car park, for example. They might light up either gas fired training props or an actual fire of some form. A lot of states around the US and certainly around Australia don't allow that anymore. And it also means that you've got expensive, dirty, messy chemicals floating around. So dry chemical powder extinguishers make a mess. If you're burning anything, people are complaining about smoke coming off it and things like that. So we're certainly becoming more aware of the carcinogens in our training environments. So, this virtual reality is obviously another way of doing it. Some of our competitors in that space, probably been around for 10 years or so, are the Bull X Digital Attack product line. Some of you may be familiar with that. That's a sort of a laser-based system and a TV screen that shows a fire, and you point at the TV screen and the fire gets smaller. That's good if you're actually in the location that you're training in, but with virtual reality, we could be training in the space station, we could be training under in a submarine, we could be, you know, training in a factory, as I said before, even if you're inside in the warm and it could be snowing outside.
Would you like me to start the presentation? Do you want to go through the video now, James, or what do you think?
Yeah, look, maybe we'll run the video. That sort of gives people a little bit of an overview of where we're at, and we can flick through the presentation. And probably the important thing is a bit of a demonstration and ask some questions. Yep,
so we're going to perform a demo here. The third blank screen you see is actually the product itself. So I think it's all important that you watch this video. It's James talking about it and then the product. So we'll start that now and then talk more after that.
Hi, my name's James Mullins. I'm the founder of FLAIM Systems. I'm a 25-year volunteer firefighter here in Victoria, Australia, and I've worked in the tech industry for over 20 years. The technology we've developed enables us to train the PASS system, pull, aim, squeeze and sweep, using virtual reality, so we can put you in front of over 20 different fire types, so that your fire ward, your first responders, can really experience what it's like to use a fire extinguisher. Watch this video to find out a little bit more about FLAIM Extinguisher and how it can be.
Do you and others in your workplace know how to use the fire extinguisher hanging on the wall? Early response to fire saves lives and property. With our FLAIM Extinguisher training system, users learn how to extinguish a fire in the office, home or workplace, so people are ready to act when a fire breaks out. FLAIM Extinguisher delivers hands-on training using cutting-edge virtual reality technology, immersing users in a fire scenario with realistic sound and vision. Users can learn how to operate water, dry chemical powder, foam and CO2 extinguishers from anywhere. There is no mess. There are no chemicals and no impact on the environment, unlike when you use a real extinguisher for training. And it's more effective and engaging than online or PowerPoint training. You can set up FLAIM Extinguisher in under 5 minutes. It comes in a small suitcase with virtual reality subsystem, support equipment, and scenario software. The equipment fully integrates with industry standard fire extinguishers. To enhance training outcomes, FLAIM Extinguisher tracks user performance. You can monitor the retardant usage, and workplace trainers can provide live feedback on technique and engage others in the room. FLAIM Extinguisher has over 15 fire scenarios that mimic real fire behavior, including movement, smoke, and the impact of different retardants. FLAIM can develop new workplace scenarios to meet specialist training needs. You can now train anywhere at any time. FLAIM Extinguisher can be shipped easily if you have employees in multiple locations, and trainers can even travel with the case as carry-on luggage. FLAIM Systems is based in Geelong, Australia, and was born from 10 years hardware and software development research at Deakin University.
I encourage you to explore how FLAIM Extinguisher can work for your training by contacting one of our sales team. Once you've tried our system, I'm sure you'll agree that virtual reality is an amazing training tool that will better prepare your people to respond to fires in the workplace.
All right, sorry, there might have been a little technical difficulty there, but hopefully we're all able to see that and hear it. It felt a little weird. I put it on mute, but we put it on mute, so apologize. But James, the video just elaborated on that. What the product and the solution and everything, and so everyone that's listening, please continue to fire in some questions, any suggestions as well. We got James here, so it's really valuable. So James, do you want to go through the PowerPoint now, or?
Yeah, look, if we bring that up, we can flick through it and have a bit of a chat. I don't want to go through it chapter and verse, but yeah. I guess most of these, or all of these resources are certainly available to the sales team. So please reach out to Kevin and grab bits and pieces and the videos and share them with the customers. We've got them linked on YouTube and so forth. So, right, I'll flick through this quickly, and look, I'll talk a little bit about FLAIM Systems. We started out, I've been in the emergency services sector for all my life. I'm third generation firefighter. I went away and did a robotics degree 20 years ago now, before I had grey hair. And, we started FLAIM as a result of a lot of research development that we were doing in this space. We started FLAIM about 3 years ago. And really our mission is to be able to train the next generation of emergency services using some really cool technologies. But the technology shouldn't be the bits that people see. It should be so intuitive that people think they're training an existing method, I guess. And that's really the key to virtual reality and immersive learning and immersive training. It's about being able to provide the technology so that the people inside it feel as if they're there. I'll probably use an example. I'm not sure if any of the defence team are here, but we're in Hawaii doing a demonstration for a crew a year or so ago with our bigger system. And one of the young lads had put a fire out in a car. He was sweating, he was hot, he was exhausted. He went to lean on the car wasn't there, he fell over. It is that real that people think they're there. So I'm going to just flick through this one. Probably talk about who we are and who we partner with. I'm going to flick through some of these and I'll come back to them. We've grown quite a lot as a team over the past few years. And we're servicing, I think it's around 18 countries now, and some really interesting use cases. We started off predominantly in the Air Force sector with our larger system, but have really gone through all the defence forces, into fire departments, obviously big companies, mining, oil and gas, for example. Dali was our first distributor internationally and been a great partner around the world. So really, really excited about working with the team, and I certainly love getting over to FDIC and other conferences and meeting you all. And I'm going to go through withdrawals in the next week or so when we should be there. I think we've spoken about FLAIM Extinguisher. It really has been the collaboration of a lot of R&D over many years, and really was the next generation of product from our FLAIM trainer that was designed for training firefighters. FLAIM Extinguisher really is designed for training anyone. We see this as a crossover product. It can be used by fire services for public outreach and for training their own people. Probably the public outreach is a really interesting thing. As I said, I'm a firefighter. We have a large urban population, new housing estates. 99% of houses don't have fire extinguishers. We've surveyed. We're finding that people just don't know what they are, how to use them. So we take this out into the community. We show them how to use a fire extinguisher, and even as a volunteer fire department, we then sell them fire extinguishers. So at least they've got them in their houses and they know how to use them, which is a really good fire prevention strategy. There's a lot of text on this. I'm going to flick through, but really the system is self-contained in a small case. I do have a case here, and I'm sure Kevin's got the details. But it's not a very big case. It can travel as carry-on luggage on an aircraft. Fits in the trunk of a car quite easily. Self-contained, charges, runs for about 4 or 5 hours. Plug it into a TV or a projector at the customer site so that an instructor can view what the student is doing, and off they go. Really, really quick and simple. Very easy to use. With about 10 minutes worth of training, anyone can use this system. When I say 10 minutes, that's instructor time. Trainees and students, they don't need to know how to use it at all. It's literally 10 seconds and they're off and running. I guess I'm going to flick through this. Some of the chapter and verse from the OSHA website around an employer shall provide the education required at least annually on how to use a fire extinguisher after the initial training. So I think that probably, as I mentioned before, probably isn't being upheld in most parts of the world. And certainly something that you can leverage when you're talking to potential clients.
Yep, and we just posted the link in the chat room. So if you guys want to review the OSHA standard in more detail, it's in the chat bar.
Fantastic. As I said, I think we're covering a lot of these points as we move forward. But compared to any existing system on the market, we believe we're lower cost. We can train in multiple environments. In fact, we have over, I think, 27 training environments now, from mining sector, residential, industrial, office, hospitals, vehicles. It's getting bigger and bigger. We do have a list of those, and we can share those out as well.
I just shared
I
just shared the list of the scenarios to the group. So when you have time, flip through those, and that
fantastic.
Can spark your thinking about all the different types of extinguisher training that's possible.
Probably the interesting thing too, I guess, is that we can create custom scenarios. So we've been approached by what's called a RTO, Registered Training Organisation, over here in Australia. They have a large contract with our version of Home Depot, and they wanted to train in their own environment with their own familiar looking store layout. And I'll give you a demonstration of that in a little bit. But if you've got a big enough client that wants to create that custom environment, that's certainly something we can do as well. And it's immediately recognisable when their employees put the headset on, and they can feel as if they're in their own environment. And that really does get the heart rate up as well. I'll flick through. So, I think I've touched on a lot of these before too, but it's all about reducing the training cost, the environmental and health impact. For anyone that has fired off a fire extinguisher before, certainly a dry chemical or powder, it's not a fun experience. It's not great to clean up. It gets on everything. It literally goes everywhere, and that's probably a good learning outcome for students, that if they do fire off one of these, how much of a mess it makes, and our virtual environment replicates that as well. Fully self-contained. We've actually embedded a Fireboy Zinnex extinguisher into the system as well for your markets in North America. So it means that the user is physically holding an extinguisher. They feel it in their hands. They've got the weight, and they can approach a fire. Virtual reality allows you to walk around the fire. You can approach it from different angles. In fact, we recommend that. When we start with training, we really start with training outcomes, I guess, in mind. So we want to know what people are doing wrong. We want to allow people to make mistakes in the virtual environment, and that's something we can do over and over again in VR without risk, I guess. So we want people to walk too close to the fire and get in the smoke. It pops up and shows that it's a fail. We want people to run out of suppressant, because most people think a fire extinguisher will last until they put the fire out. Obviously not the case. So, our surveying is finding that people have some really interesting preconceptions about what a fire extinguisher can and cannot do. Some fires are too big for a fire extinguisher. How do you train people that that's an eventuality, and maybe the best course of action is to close the door, call the fire brigade, call the fire service, and get out of there. So, this is a system that really is driving this home, and once you get people into it, it's pretty easy to sell. I guess these are all the bits and pieces. I've shared the brochures and the product line cards and bits and pieces, and Kevin can push them out through your network later on as well. But it's all about creating that realistic training environment, as realistic as possible, to get the training outcomes that we're looking for. And the training outcomes really around the pass technique, the pull, aim, squeeze, sweep, how to choose the right suppressant, what extinguisher to use on what type of fires, all that sort of thing. We probably all know that most fire extinguishers will be okay on most kinds of fires. They will work at all. Some are better than others, but we also certainly know that putting water on a fat fire is not a great idea. And the benefit of virtual reality is we can show that any sort of traditional methods, other than literally putting water on a fat fire, you can't show it. I guess, once again, use this deck to educate yourselves, but also push out to some of your potential customers. I think this is an opportunity, and we're still learning what our customer base is around the world. But as I said before, fire services is one vector for this technology, but really it is much broader. It is the training organisations, it's the companies themselves. So I think I'll be interested to see in the North American market where the sales really come from. I'll touch on that in a little bit, I guess. So, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong. I think retail's around 5 in the US.
It's 6,000.
Six. Radio. There's probably quite a healthy margin on this one as well too. And I was talking to one of our sales team in Australia, and he's selling sort of a bit over 2 a week on average at the moment. And the key is a demo. Carry it around, give people a demonstration of the system, put them in it, blows them away. They go out and show it to their customers and their end users, and it really sort of sells itself. Every demo he's done, he has sold a system. He hasn't lost a sale after a demonstration. So that's the kind of uptake we're seeing. He's been on board for a couple of months with this product now, and as I said, probably averaging a couple a week. Creating custom scenarios is certainly possible depending on the complexity. For example, if you had McDonald's come to us or a fast food restaurant, we can create their environment down to the individual knobs and switches on the fryers. So it really comes down to what level of detail. We always try and start with the training outcome, understand what people want, and work backwards from there. And here we go. So I guess, as I said just a couple of minutes ago, our customers are fairly wide and diverse. We have registered training organisations. Kevin, you call them something different, I think, in the US. So these are people that go and so these are people that go and train people in their own workplaces on OH&S. They might do first aid training. They might do fire warden or fire evacuation drills and all that sort of stuff. Fire service itself, and we're finding that some of these, the bottom list, the schools, the hospitals, the offices, the factories, mining sectors, airlines, retail and fast food, they're starting to buy them themselves so that they can do this internal training using the extinguishers as well. So really, really interesting to see the uptake in different domains. So, I said there's some statistics before. 20% of fire and incidents where extinguishers are used, they were not used properly. And we're showing over, and this is a very large study in the US, that over 34 years, 95% of fire incidents could have been effectively extinguished during that period if people knew how to use fire extinguishers. So it makes our job as firefighters a lot easier if people are skilled, trained, aware, and it should be part of all of our fire prevention strategies, I guess, to get people as trained as possible. And that's certainly something I'm fairly passionate about over here in Australia. And I talk about this. This isn't the first responder. This is the initial responder. This is the person that's on scene, whether it's a security, whether it's an office worker. Everyone should know how to use a fire extinguisher.
Yeah, teach. If everyone knows how to properly use a fire extinguisher, that's something that's going to benefit not only the community but especially the fire departments. Very much so, and certainly make everyone's life a lot easier. I think that's the end of the presentation. So probably we run into a demonstration now, do you think, Kevin? Yeah, demo would be great. That's really the best way of seeing it. So you'll see James here actually wearing it, and then this other screen in the middle that has been a rogue black screen the entire time is actually the unit itself. So I'll start, we'll look at the screen in the max size, so then you can see James and me. Make us a little bit larger. All right, can you see there, Kevin? That's working okay? I can see you, so you can see me, you can see you, and perfect. Right, so I'm in the lobby environment now. I can see that I'm ready to select either a scenario. I can run through the types of extinguishers and get up to speed on what they actually put out. Yeah, if you could go through those kind of slowly, because there's a little bit of a lag, so just kind of go through them a little bit, piece by piece. I think it'll be helpful. Yeah, so we've got in our system, we've got water, we've got CO2, we've got dry chemical or powder, and we've got foam. We also have another one called PV stop, which is certainly used over here in Australia now for putting on solar panels or PV panels when there's been a fire to render them safe. That's an interesting technology. But people can do some self-paced learning about what various types of fire extinguishers
can be used on what types of fires. We can go into technique, and we run through the pass. So we're teaching people all about, pulling the pin, aim at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, and sweep. So this is just a self-paced learning module that, as part of a larger package of courseware that people do around their fire extinguisher, how to escape, how to evacuate, how to call the fire service, how to set off the manual call points or the break glass alarms, part of the standard fire warden training I would expect. Then we go into categories. So what you're watching, and it's probably a little bit lower quality, is what the instructor would be seeing or what would be up on the TV screen or projector on the wall behind the student that's using the technology. As far as scenarios, we have quite a few different categories. So if we go into business, for example, I mentioned before our Home Depot is called Bunnings. We can go into this. Now, it's put us in a Home Depot-esque environment. As I said, this is the paint shop. So, as realistic environment as possible. I'm actually sitting down on a chair now at the moment, but I can stand up, I can walk around, I can get down low. If I had a big enough area, I could walk all the way around this store. But it gives me a few different kinds of fire extinguishers. So I've got a foam, I've got a powder, and I've got a water. This looks like a B-class fire to me. So pretty much any of these suppressants will work. We can have the conversation with the end user about mess, I guess. I'd probably, for this kind of fire, I'd use a water because I know that water's easier to clean up than a dry chemical powder. So I can select my extinguisher. It shows up in my hand. I can walk over and I can aim at the base of the fire, squeeze and sweep. Quite a simple process. But
so
as you can see, it pops
me
up
about those stats.
Says, sorry, Kevin?
So walk us through those stats and what do those stats really mean?
Yeah, so as I said before, a fire extinguisher of this size only lasts for about 18 seconds or so. So this is showing that with my application, the way I did it, I used 23% of the extinguisher. It only took me 7 seconds to put the fire out. That's from when I first started applying the suppressant. And in this case, there's no fire left because I was successful. If I go back to a lobby, for example, and we can start again and go again, we can go into maybe a pallet fire. This is a bit more of a stubborn fire. I can grab a powder, for example. I can have a look around. Once again, I could walk around this entire factory. If I get too close and put my head in the smoke, that will pop up as a fail as well. Now, I'm not going to put all of this fire out because I'm only going to aim at one spot because I just want to see what that looks like. After about 20 seconds, I've run out of suppressant, so I've got no more trigger, and it'll pop up and it'll tell me I've failed to extinguish the fire. Likewise, there's a number of scenarios that are pretty much impossible to put out. If I go to a car fire, for example, we can have a go, but people need to be aware that fire extinguishers can't do everything. And the right course of action might be to sit back and make sure that we're safe. Yeah. Now you can see there, this car's hit the pole. It's on a bit of an angle. We wouldn't want people to walk around there. We can start to talk to people about getting too close if gas tanks let go, if tyres explode, things like that. We can have a go at it, but we're going to have some effect, but probably not going to be able to put it all out.
And James, one thing you've told me a lot about within virtual reality, whether it's the flame trainer or the extinguisher that we're talking about right now, the last thing that you do is put out the fire. So elaborate to me on that, what are all the different learning opportunities that exist within these different scenes, and how does the trainer work to teach the students on all the things they can think about? Granted, putting out the fire is important, but talk us through all the other things before putting out the actual fire.
Yeah, great point, Kevin. I guess one of the things that we see quite often is people can get very fixated on the fire itself, and they really need to experience. They need to be able to do a proper, what we'd call a size up or 360, and really understand the risks to themselves and others. So they should be, as I said before, calling the fire service. They should be talking about evacuation. They should be looking for their escape route out of the building. All of these things before they even attempt to extinguish the fire. And we want to see this get to sort of the muscle memory stage. We want people to be fairly automatic. They should be decisive, making quick action. They should be, it should be like falling off a bike, really. It should be fairly straightforward. They should be decisive, making these decisions, and then grabbing the extinguisher and attacking it. If it's not working, they should be getting down low, backing away, getting out, closing a door, doing all those sorts of things. So we can do all of that before, as I said before, or a lot of that before they even try to extinguish the fire.
James, could you give us an example of a scene where you use the wrong surfactant or the wrong material?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, most of those are to do with water extinguishers. I'm going to jump into a residential, and I'm going to grab a fat fire. So we're in a house. You can see there.
Nice house.
Everyone knows you put water on fire, right? And funnily enough, that's what we hear from everyone when we go and do public training. But if I put water on this, it's going to flare up. It's going to get a lot bigger. I'll eventually put it out, but it'll pop up and it'll tell us that there's incorrect suppressant use. So people get quite a shock that water does push a fat fire around like that. But it's a great way of learning by making mistakes. And if I go into
that point right there about making mistakes, where granted in the real world we don't want to make mistakes when you're talking about life-saving chances, but here we actually want to encourage people to make mistakes. Can you elaborate on that point? Yeah,
look, I always say, quite a well-known fact that we certainly learn from our mistakes more than our success, and in this environment, we want people to make as many mistakes as possible so that they're laying in bed that night and thinking, yeah, I won't do that again. It comes down to that experiential learning, as I said. A failure is a great trainer. And the benefit of virtual reality is you can fail as many times as you like and learn from them every time. Whereas if you failed in the real world, things could get quite dicey quite quickly. I'm running through some of these scenarios now, and I'm just going to jump out of the headset in a second. We'll get to questions. But if people choose the wrong extinguisher and use the wrong one, that's fine. That's exactly what we want to happen in this environment, because they'll get the confirmation on the screen about what's happening, but they'll also get the instructor standing beside them. And as I said, this isn't designed to replace fire training and fire instructors and things like that. It certainly has its place for self-based, self-led training. But we find that in the real world, this will be part of coursework. It will be part of annual training. It will be rolled out. It will be travelled with. And as I said, the statistics that we're getting back is the engagement out of virtual training as opposed to traditional training is significantly better. There's been some, I'm going to jump out of there now and perhaps we'll switch back. There's been a lot of studies done in various industries, most notably the healthcare industry around the benefits of virtual training. And we're seeing that after a year, we're finding an 80% retention rate for basic skill training out of VR training compared to around 20% for traditional training. So we all learn by doing, and virtual reality really is doing. And because it is immersive, it is a fresh way of training. It certainly beats the old PowerPoint training methodology that we've been using for quite some time.
And this is kind of specific to the product. There's been 2 questions on this. Would you be able to maybe, you're now full screen so we can see you a little bit bigger. would you mind maybe holding up the case again, the headset, and the extinguisher itself? And I know right now it comes with the little clicker on the end of it.
Yep.
But walk us through how is that product that you have in your hand connect to the extinguisher, and then also
I'm going to just put it back in the case.
For the clean. There you go.
Yeah, just 1 second. So everything comes in the case. It's a little bit awkward with the webcam.
So
everything comes in the case.
What's in there?
All the charges, all the leads, everything that's needed.
Okay.
So we've got our Zinix Fireboy extinguisher, the hose system, the trigger mechanism that clips onto the end of the hose. We have a HDMI receiver. This plugs into the TV so that an instructor or the rest of the class can watch what the trainee is doing. A USB power supply that charges both the headset and supplies power to the HDMI receiver if the TV doesn't have a USB port, and some different country-specific power plugs, as well as the headset itself and an instruction manual. All comes in a small case. I think I got the weight in there. It's under 10 pounds, fairly straightforward.
And James,
so really, to get going, you plug your receiver in, supply it with power, grab the headset, grab your extinguisher, clip your little tracker on the end. You're up and running in about 2 minutes, and training a couple of minutes after that. So very, very straightforward.
So that receiver, you just walk me through that. Mike Mitchell asked a question about if the teacher can see what the student is doing. How does that receiver work, and what does it do?
So the view you're watching of me using the extinguisher a couple of minutes ago was pulled from this receiver straight into my laptop using a little capture system. But traditionally, this has a HDMI plug on the end. It plugs into a TV or a projector, and we supply some adapters for different TVs and projectors. In the headset, you just basically select that receiver, and whatever the student is seeing in virtual reality, the instructor or the rest of the class can see in 2 dimensions on the screen.
Okay. And 2 other questions in regards to the product as it stands now, and maybe some future product development. Right now, that little the controller, it clips onto the end of the fire extinguisher hose, and that
Correct.
Headset is tracking the controller. One question that we've had is that will that handle or will that controller ever be moved to the actual handle spot, and sort of is that something that can be retrofitted on future products?
Yeah, look, we certainly see that as possibly part of the product roadmap and in a future product or an upgrade pathway as well. We talk about, and probably something we haven't touched on, Kevin, is an ongoing revenue stream associated with this, so that it's not necessarily a one-off sale. It can be, but we also sell a subscription system with this as well. So it allows upgraded scenarios and software for the life of the product. So, annual subscription effectively. It's a great model because it means that, you're touching base with your existing customers every year to find out how they're using the system, what further scenario development they might need, and then, making some revenue ongoing with this kind of model. The system will continue to work if they don't purchase that annually, but certainly we've made great advances every year with our fire models, our smoke models, and it is based on real physics and the real CFD-like application of our suppressants onto fire. Where was I going with that one, Kevin? Sorry.
My screen stopped for a second, so I actually missed about 10 seconds. I don't know if everyone else did.
Right, yeah.
I think the subscription part's important. Where, if anything, I'd like you to elaborate sort of what is in that, and then to finish out the thought on the moving the handle from the end of the hose to the actual handle on the end of this kind of the handle spigot.
Yeah. So look, we see I've got a couple of questions there around CFD. Computational fluid dynamics is the technology. We make a simplified version to work in virtual reality so that we get as much realism as possible of the effects of the fire and suppressant working together. So I'll answer that question. Our subscription model really is an annual maintenance fee that we charge to enable us to be able to push out our software updates to existing customers. So those software updates aren't just bug fixes. We'll obviously bug fix for the life of the product, but we're pushing out new training scenarios, new environments, new suppressant types, improvements to the way the fire behaves and so forth. So we're finding a lot of our customers are buying maybe 2 or 3 years up front because they're buying as part of capital procurement. You might find that other training organisations want to put that onto an annual subscription, want to pay annually, and that's fine too. And Kevin can certainly run you through some of that. As far as hardware upgrades around into the future as well, that's certainly something we're continuing. We're an innovation company. We continue to build products. We will be adding new features quite often, and we would see upgrades to this product every year. We probably see the life of this product at about 3 years, which is fairly standard for a piece of technology like this. We would see that people would probably be looking to upgrade in around about 3 years or so. So you've got that. Once you've got a customer using this kind of technology, we're going to be maintaining an upgrade pathway for them as well into the future. And certainly even the existing technologies, we want to be able to add upgrade pathways for hardware as well, but that would probably be an additional fee.
Yep. And the product as it stands now, we saw the different pieces and we saw then you demonstrate it, but you have the headset on and then that controller is on the end of the hose. And so I think Correct. It's important to know that when they're initiating the surfactant, they're actually pressing the end of the hose and aiming it. And so that's where it stands now. There will be future hardware development where the initiation of the surfactant is with the actual squeeze handle. But as James said, that'll happen somewhere down the road as additional software and hardware developments occur in the near future.
Correct. Yep. We've got a whole heap of products in this space, and really interested to hear feedback from people on the ground about training challenges too that could be moved across into the virtual environments. And this is where we get all of our product ideas from, is really working hand in hand with our end users.
Yep. And so I'm just asking everyone in the audience now, Grant, we have some inside and outside sales reps here that focus on equipment or pumps. So just interested in the different markets that exist out there. So if you got questions or ideas, let's see. From Ron, we got a question for repairs. Those can be done actually locally here. For the most part, I guess, talk about what can break, and if something does break, how we will be able to fix that in America.
Yeah, look, it really is a very, very simple system. There's not much that can go wrong with it. If you do have something that does fail, it would be a whole unit exchange of the component within it. Certainly, Kevin has the spare parts listing. We're very, while we're on the other side of the globe, we're very close. We chat quite often, we catch up quite often, Kevin. Really, we've got nearly 100 of these out in the field at the moment, and don't see any challenges with things breaking, other than potentially dropping them onto concrete from height or something. We haven't seen that. People are generally pretty good, but I'd imagine in the future, as we scale this out more and more, we will probably see some things like that break. We can certainly work with them. It's not the whole unit to be replaced that expensive. It would be a percentage of the unit price.
Okay, and there was another question on sales price, which I just answered in the chat bar for you, Jim. But our sales price is $6,000 with 1 year subscription, and it lists there's also a yearly subscription for $1,000.
And yeah, quite a good margin on it. And probably touching on the other thing on here, congratulations, Kevin, on your engagement.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was probably the craziest question I'll ever ask in my life. But I saw another 2 questions that happened in the chat bar. What are some of the other competitors doing? I know.
Yeah, great question from Paul.
Yeah,
so really the closest competitor we see, and it's probably the market incumbent, is the Bull-X system from Lion. I think they call it Digital Attack. It's been in the market for a little while. It's a physical fire extinguisher that shoots a laser beam that you can't see, and there's a TV panel effectively that shows a fire on it. If you point in the right direction and squeeze and do the right motions, the fire gets smaller. So you have to put the fire panel, in your training room. It can certainly train the pass technique, but it doesn't give you that situational awareness. So I think that's the biggest point of difference. It doesn't really allow you to experience what smoke looks like unless you combine it with a smoke machine. It becomes a challenge to train in different locations. You need to be in that physical location to train. So we see a few other companies making some virtual reality extinguisher training environments. They are traditionally using the more expensive headsets, so would be a lot more costly, require a lot more technical expertise to set up. We're talking laptops, plugging cables together, all that sort of thing. So our system, a lot smaller, compact, self-contained. Really, as I said, if it took you more than 5 minutes worth of training as a salesperson to learn how to use it, I'd be very, very surprised. And our customers are using it within 10 seconds. You put it on their head and they're off and running. It's really interesting to see the demographics from young kids up to, we've had my 94-year-old at the time grandfather in it as well. So really, really self-explanatory, I guess.
And James, I know I've heard some other complaints around it, around just the portability of the Bull-X unit, where it's in some bigger cases or it has some of these flammable liquids. Touch on that a little bit, and then even you mentioned, you said the flame extinguisher product is what, 10 pounds?
Yeah, about 10 pounds. So traditional fire extinguisher training, as I said, either using the Bull-X digital system, which is a screen, or a lot of training organisations are still using gas-fired training props, or propane-fired training props, which are a bit of a challenge to transport. They're messy, they're dirty, you've got to clean up after them, and you use real fire extinguishers with them, so you've got a consumable every time. Obviously, the benefit for this system is there's no consumables. You plug it in, you power it up, you charge it. Lasts about 4 or 5 hours on a charge. So, you could be training all day with a lunch break, plug it in for half an hour to charge in the middle of the day, and you're good to go. We've done trade shows, 7, 8, 9 hour days with the one headset. No, not a problem at all.
And then from a price standpoint, we know that the other competitor, Bull-X, which you talked about, is at least twice the price, if not more. So that is an advantage that we have.
Look, we're seeing it's probably somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. Depending on options, I think. So it's certainly more cost effective, and it really is the next generation of training because it is so immersive. And
everyone, please continue to put your questions in there, but we got about 10 minutes left till the hour, and we don't need to go that long. But just to kind of recap, to hit people in the head with some of the top value proposition, just give me the quick elevator pitch on why the flame extinguisher is something that businesses or training academies or departments should consider. What's your elevator pitch and your...
Yeah, well, look, I guess I'm the technology guy, so I see it from a different angle, but it's really interesting, and I really enjoy getting out and about with our customers. And a lot of our customers aren't necessarily the end users; they're then training other people, but they see it as a way to really engage and be fresh. Fire extinguisher training hasn't changed much over the past 20, 30, 40 years. This is a way for people to really engage with people, to make fire extinguisher training interesting. Everyone loves firing off a fire extinguisher, but it's getting really, really hard to do these days. Certain states really don't want you firing off fire extinguishers for training, but the OSHA requirements say that you should be doing it every year. Now, if you're doing that every year, it can be quite expensive, can be quite messy. If you've got a large workforce and you want to train everyone, can be challenging. So really, this is about being able to put people in an immersive environment with a visceral reaction from the user about what the fire is doing, how they're approaching the fire, and letting them make mistakes to get those correct training outcomes that we're looking for.
So everyone, listen to that final clip right there, and you'll know everything you need to know in the sales pitch. But there are a few more questions rolled in, just to spitball them here. What do these products meet OSHA standards, or is there interpretations on how this can be used for training, or what do you know about that?
Yeah, look, from what we understand in the various training departments, there's a number of ways that people can train. We certainly believe that people that are using the Bullets system are being trained. So everything's about simulation in the fire industry. We've been simulating fires forever, whether it's lighting some gas on a pan on fire, or using propane, or burning a crib, or using a laser, or whatever. It's all simulation. Virtual reality and the technology that we've got is the next iteration of that. It gives you a more realistic experience than some of the traditional methods. So we don't see any challenges with the legislation. I'm just reading through some of the
Kevin Doherty just had one on what markets or scenarios being developed for currently, and how will that change over time, and also kind of what's the timeline of stuff like that?
Yeah, look, we push out updates generally every 3 months or so. It can be much quicker. So the Home Depot type environment I showed you before was about a week and a half's worth of development for an end user. So it really comes down to what you need to be able to sell into a market. We do generally charge for custom scenarios if we've got very, very specific environments, or we can push it onto our development pipeline and push it out with quarterly releases. I guess it really comes down to how much is involved to generate that environment. The graphics take some time to develop, but as far as our roadmap, really that's driven by you. We get feedback all the time from our end users that say, look, we want to be able to push or work in this domain. Can you develop something for that? And we will, and we're working with you all the time on these sorts of things. So we're very responsive to our end users.
And Tom, the question about the custom scenarios, is there a difference if someone wants to pay for it and own it, or a difference if they want to pay for it and have it available? Is there some type of
Yeah, look, we certainly look at that. If we can push it out to the broader community, we're certainly we'd certainly prefer that, because it means everyone benefits from it. If people want very specific things, and we see that in some defence environments, for example, then often it can be a specific environment specifically for an end user. So we're very flexible, and we can have that conversation. We could certainly understand, though, if a McDonald's or someone wanted to create their own environments, that they wouldn't want their competitors in that environment, and that's fine.
So final just question from you, and we talked about, or more suggestion of, what are the different markets that some of our reps should consider? I mean, fire departments are obvious, fire training academies, but you say Home Depots, McDonald's, basically anywhere that has an extinguisher, or anywhere else that you would recommend that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, look, I think it even goes down into, and look, as I said, schools, nursing homes, aged care facilities, hospitals. These are high-risk environments. Large workplaces, any building that's, certainly any multi-level office building should have a fairly rigorous fire training program in place. So I'd be looking at some of these organisations that provide training into these organisations. Often they might not have their own training in-house. They might be using external contractors to provide that training. So they're certainly end users of our system here in Australia. And they're really looking at, and they're jumping on board really quickly with our system, because it differentiates them from others as well. because they've got this new technology, it's fresh, it's really exciting. They put their clients or potential clients into it and say, we'll train your workforce using this, our opposition's using this. People just jump on it. And it really, the price point really gets down to that sort of discretionary buy kind of figure.
Awesome, James. Well, I think that wraps up this this great training hour. I know it's morning for you, so you're just going to get your day going. It's just about 5 o'clock, almost dinner time for some of us here in Chicago. But on behalf of the Darley team and the Smart Firefighting team, just want to thank you for everything you're doing. You're just a continued amazing asset for Darley and the industry. So, thank you for all you're doing. We really appreciate it. So I just change the screen so you're there. But thank you. And any final comment or words from you, James?
No, look, thank you very much for your time. Please feel free to reach out to me directly for technical questions. Kevin's right across the product line. Looking forward to seeing you all in person when that eventuates. And good luck and stay safe.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a good night. Take care.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.